Thank you for joining us. My name is Brooke Gordon, and I'm the Regional Manager of Client Diversity at BDC. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Jamohl Rutherford, who's the Business Center Manager for our Enterprise Center here in GTA West. For the past 18 months, we know that we have fast forwarded through long-term disruption. Canadian entrepreneurs are facing unprecedented challenges, but there are opportunities in every crisis. And so this year for Canadian Small Business Week with BDC, we're exploring opportunities and challenges under the theme of diversity through innovation. So as the pandemic appears to be winding down, it is more tempting to go back to the mindsets that we've held in the past. Unfortunately, the reality is that we aren't yet back to normal. We still see delays and shortages that continue to plague the supply chains. We know that in other parts of Canada, there are lockdowns that are still affecting how and if businesses can operate. This uncertainty around the future could remain for some time. So it's key that entrepreneurs adapt to this new economic landscape. And one of the most important ways that businesses can adapt is by identifying areas for innovation. Specifically today, we want to talk to you about two opportunities we're seeing that will have an effect on Canadian entrepreneurs and their businesses for the next year at least. And that's innovation through the workforce and the marketplace. So Jamohl, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brooke, for the warm introduction, and happy Small Business Week to everyone listening. So gender and ethnic diversity are clearly correlated with profitability, but women and minorities remain underrepresented in the workforce. Let's take a few minutes to discuss this further. So 55% of Canadian small and medium-sized businesses have told us that they're finding it hard to hire employees. I'm sure many of the business owners listening to us have this issue. Many companies in our labor shortage study have been unable to fill jobs, some for 3 months, 4 months, some for more. More than a quarter are struggling to retain workers, right? This leaves them with no choice but to work longer hours themselves, sometimes delay, sometimes refuse orders, or sometimes a combination of both. And with the aging population and the baby boomers leaving the workforce, the situation could get even worse as the economy recovers to pre-pandemic levels. The pandemic has, in many ways, really compounded the challenge of women and minorities remaining underrepresented in the workforce. One example I'll share with you is the example of Sabina, who obtained a master's degree in statistics, a bachelor's in science, and a diploma in IT systems from India. She arrived in Canada with her family from Dubai and is still unable to find a position commensurate with her level of education. She felt compelled to apply for a role as a cashier to get some Canadian experience. Another example is a gentleman by the name of Martin. And in Martin's case, Martin, who had been working in the mining security, and he's been a mining security expert for about 20 years until the mines in his hometown actually closed. Although he was highly trained, he has since found it really difficult to transfer his existing skills to a new field. His hometown has even been identified as an emerging innovation and tech hub, but a large part of what he learned in university is now being considered outdated, and it's challenging to apply to the local job market. A study done by Deloitte showed that individuals can face underemployment challenges across segments of the population, spanning levels of education, attainment, and qualifications. Underemployment exists, I would say, across a spectrum, representing a range of circumstances between full gainful employment and unemployment. What we do know is unemployment affects a number of populations, such as new Canadians, young and older adults, Indigenous people, and others because of unique barriers that they face and social prejudice. You heard me say at the beginning that gender and ethnic diversity are clearly correlated with profitability. I want to dig into that a bit. McKinsey found that companies in the top quartile for gender diversity on executive teams were 25% more likely to have above average profitability than companies in the fourth quartile. Companies with more than 30% of women executives were more likely to outperform companies where this percentage ranged from 10% to 30%. And in turn, those companies were still more likely to outperform those with even fewer women executives or none at all. In the case of ethnic and cultural diversity, McKinsey's findings were equally compelling. In 2019, the top quartile companies outperformed those in the fourth by 36% in profitability. And the likelihood of outperformance continues to be higher for diversity in ethnicity than for gender. So committing to steps to increasing diversity not only makes sense given the labor shortage that we just talked about, and the fact that your company needs to reflect the communities that they serve, the examples I've highlighted make a compelling case, I think, for the potential impact on profitability. So entrepreneurs listening in, I would implore you to take steps to ensure that your hiring strategy is accounting for this reality. The effects of the pandemic will linger, shaping the way that Canadians conduct business for the foreseeable future. To succeed in this new environment, you'll need to be both adaptable and prepared for what's coming next. I want to share an example that comes to mind of what this looks like in practice. There's a company that does insulation work in condos. To get more talent, they have been identifying resources in Asian countries like India, helping to process their visas, bringing them here, putting them directly on site with supervisors where they're trained on site. These newcomers are paid a decent wage and are set up well in Canada almost immediately. Another example is a tunneling company that does project-based work. They are large, growing, and we're facing a limited and diminishing talent pool. They made a decision to bring in high-class talent from Central Europe. Because they work on projects, they bring in crews from countries like Poland on contract for the length of the projects. This works well as the talent keeps moving across the world for different projects. So I'll ask you, what innovations have you considered for your company that can result in the same level of profitability as having ethnic and gender diversity in your workforce? I want to share one more story, a really remarkable one that brings all of this to life, I think. The company that I'm talking about is Virtual Gurus, and it's headed up by Bobby Reset. The company wanted to make sure that its virtual assistants stayed employed during the COVID-19 pandemic and offering discounts, some free services to its clients in the early months of the shutdown. According to Bobby, many of their clients quit at the beginning of the pandemic, but slowly clients came back as many decided to pivot and realize that the business must go on. Bobby decided to also pivot at Virtual Gurus after she spoke to some of her investors about helping out startups specifically and about keeping the virtual assistants working, many of whom are from marginalized communities such as Indigenous, LGBTQ, and people of color. They provided roughly 110 startups free services like social media and even discounted their services. This was done to ensure that she could keep her virtual assistants also employed. She says that Virtual Gurus did take a financial hit during the first 2 months of the pandemic, not surprising. But the month of April attracted many paying customers, and they only ended up losing a small number of clients. Businesses really rebounded in May and June, and June was a great month for this Calgary-based company. So Bobby saw this opportunity in the new normal because employers are seeing the value of remote work in terms of the cost as well as the quality. Clients who have had to leave due to the pandemic are starting to come back and are being welcomed with a lower rate. Now that we've discussed that there are tangible and profitable benefits to a diverse workforce, I'll turn it back to Brooke to talk about our next source of innovation, which is our supply chain. Brooke?
Thanks so much, Jamohl. Now, before we get started, I want to share with you a few interesting facts. So based on a US study, did you know that 85% of consumers' purchasing decisions are influenced by women, even if the product is for a man or purchased by a man? While only 1% of corporate spending goes towards women-owned businesses. Now, you can say, yes, this is a US statistic, but really, how different is it in Canada? Well, if we look at the numbers that we got from WBE Canada, the story is similar. Only 5% of corporate and government contracts are awarded to women-owned businesses. And this is, again, still significant. What we see is that the playing field is not level. And the situation is the same with other represented groups, not just women. This is the reason why supplier diversity programs have been created. Now, they're very well known in the US. They're becoming more and more present in Canada. So to name for a few companies who have supplier diversity programs, there's the main banks like RBC, BMO, TD, CIBC. There's Accenture, Kellogg's, Staples, Walmart, Toyota, GM, Merck, Bell, City of Toronto. I can go on and on. What's common, though, is that all of their supplier programs have similar objectives: to give an opportunity to underrepresented groups, to be introduced to larger corporations' supply chains, and to have a fair chance to bid for contracts. Now, when a diverse supplier wins a contract with a large corporation or government, yes, this unique contract helps them grow and scale their business, but it also adds value and credibility to their client portfolio. It helps open doors. And with regards to those soft skills, well, we know that diverse suppliers are provided the chance to improve and grow in terms of their business acumen, their professional development, and their business connections. So to be considered as a diverse supplier, normally a company is owned and managed by at least 51% from an underrepresented group. And this could be Indigenous persons, LGBTQ2+, persons with disabilities, veterans, visible minorities, and women. Now, let's do some myth busting, because I hear a lot of questions about what supplier diversity really is. And a common misconception is that it's a quota system or a social program that's designed to benefit select groups while adding little value to the bottom line. And that is simply not the case. I mean, you saw on the previous slide, and you heard me talk about the important benefits to the underrepresented groups. But to the companies who have those programs, there's a benefit to them as well. First and foremost, it promotes innovation through the entrance of new products, services, and solutions. We have access to a new profile of companies with new ideas and new perspectives. There's a greater supply chain competitiveness because when we add suppliers, often smaller, they have more flexibility, reduced overhead, and lower administrative costs. What we heard from Jamohl also is that people want organizations to be present with communities to support them. So a supplier diversity program at the corporate level, it can be seen as being a good corporate citizen, which above all we are. And then for some corporations, it might be difficult to have access to some communities to share their products and services. We know that suppliers who are a customer or have you as a customer first, they might actually be more inclined to do business with you. And then, of course, there's other companies in the community that might also be influenced by knowing that colleagues from their community are doing business with these other organizations. We know that having greater revenues, entrepreneurs can do more. And it could be for themselves, it could be for their families, it could be for their community. And then last, but again, reinforcing what Jamohl was talking about, it's about increased employee satisfaction and retention, because employees want organizations to share their values and be involved. And to give you a good idea, we saw this at BDC. My colleagues in procurement received many comments from employees within the hour of launching our supplier diversity program at BDC. These are friends and colleagues in head office and business centers from coast to coast to coast who are saying how proud they are to work for BDC. And that's because we're committed to creating an inclusive supply chain. We want to make sure our procurement processes are sourced from products and services that include diverse suppliers. We also promote the value of these programs to other companies, like we're doing today, to consider supplier diversity programs to speed up adoption. When it comes to business owners, we recognize that in addition to capital, businesses need access to markets to grow and expand. By certifying as a diverse supplier, you can gain access to new procurement opportunities and meetings like Meet the Buyer events. And even if these events don't first off result in a contract, but you gain insight, you learn a little bit more about what large organizations need, and you get on the radar in order to consider mandates in the future. There's also networking opportunities. You can connect with procurement teams, as I mentioned, but also other businesses to share their learning, network, and become suppliers to each other. And you're able to differentiate yourself as a business. And then finally, you can gain visibility even through that whole certification process through the different organizations that offer it. And so you can find out more at bdc.ca/supplier. Now, we know there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, especially to business owners. And so at BDC, we created a 5-step approach to support our diverse clients. We start by listening and learning. We undertake research alone or with partners to better understand the needs of Canadian entrepreneurs. So for example, last March, we worked with the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce to release the first study of Black entrepreneurs in Canada. And we work with our employees, our clients, and partners in the community to better understand the challenges that entrepreneurs face so that we can also understand how we can help. And then we act. Once we better understand the challenges and opportunities, we can develop tools needed to help people succeed, connect them to other partners and businesses, and inspire them to continue to think big. So yes, this includes financing like debt and equity options to support a business's objective. We also arm entrepreneurs with tools and training they need to succeed. So from building a business plan to creating a digital marketing strategy or getting your finances in order, we honestly have endless free resources, ebooks, webinars, all on our website in order to be able to support you. And if we can't actually help you directly, well, you can count on us to connect you with the others who can. And sometimes we do know that it can be harder to be who you can't see. And so we also share inspiring stories of other entrepreneurs and role models on our blog, our social media, and at events. So thank you so much for joining us here today. And hopefully you've left this session with some new insights to help set up your business for success during this unprecedented time.